I'm going to read with you this morning some of my favorite biblical texts in the New Testament. They come from the book of Hebrews. We're going to skip over some stuff, but we're going to read from chapter 10 and chapter 12. If you'd like to join me in following along there, Hebrews chapter 10. We're going to begin by reading verses 22 to 25 in that chapter. And I'd invite you, if you would you join me in standing as we read the word of the Lord this morning? Hebrews chapter 10, verse 22. Let us draw near to God with a sincere heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. If you would join me skipping over to chapter 12, we're going to read the first 3 verses there. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. These are texts that I love deeply. Some of it is just because of the athletic metaphor that works and makes sense for me, that running this race of the Christian life is difficult, and we're reminded and encouraged to run it with perseverance, to push ourselves, to keep going. It's couched, of course, in chapter 11, which we find in between here, the stories of the ancients of the faith. Those in the Old Testament who lived with perseverance, who found that God was faithful, that no matter what came, they found that the long view, the life lived in covenant with God was worthwhile because God always showed up to help. But I especially like this text because there's a corporate dimension to it. The idea, the call on our lives is personal. To run with endurance, to have faith, to root ourselves in God. But there is a belief and understanding in this text as well that you are not meant to do it on your own. That you're meant to live this persevering faith in concert with Jesus, as a response to Jesus, in community with one another. In Hebrews chapter 10, the encouragement is to gather together, to continue meeting with one another, even though there are those who are no longer in the habit of doing that. That there are people who drop off, who no longer make it a priority to gather as the church. And the author of Hebrews, who we're not entirely sure who it is, says, keep meeting together, keep gathering together. And when you do so, consider how you may spur one another on in the race that is this faith. Spur one another on specifically towards love and good deeds. May your faith be an outward reflection of what's going on in the inside of your life. When I used to work at a church plant as a youth pastor, we would meet together on a monthly basis on a Sunday night to talk about the vision of the church. And at the end, every single time, the church was much smaller than ours is now, we would read this text in Hebrews together. And at the end of it, there would be an invitation to look around the room and spur one another on by encouraging them. And so people would stand one after another talking about how they saw someone else doing something that led to the benefit of the whole church. And people felt edified just by the act of standing up and naming what they saw. It would be very simple, like I saw Joe running the coffee bar, and that looks like a difficult job, one I couldn't do, but every week there's hospitality, and I appreciate that Joe would do that. Or I saw that Jill every single week serves with the 2-year-olds, and what a crazy job that is to serve every week with the 2-year-olds. But my 2-year-old loves church because of Jill, right? And just telling that story and encouraging one another helped people press on towards the goal of being a church in a unified vision that was rooted in Christ himself. And so this last month, we've been talking about mission and vision in our church as well. And we talked about how this is the mission that has emerged from conversation out of the pews towards the pastors. This has not been, I think and I hope, not been anything that I'm telling you all to be, but it's been in my listening to the conversations of what's happening in our people in the church, of where it is we want to go as a church. What is honoring of our past, but also unifying for our future. And so we walked through this, and this is week 4 of how we've been talking about it. The first week we talked about discover. We want to help neighbors and friends discover Jesus by being a vibrant, worshiping community that is a trusted presence in greater Baltimore. We want to be a church that's evangelistic, right? We want to see people finding faith. We've talked about how we've had the No Longer Lost banner up for this entire year. And when people have confessed their sins and asked Jesus to be their Savior, they have come and signed the board, and we've had 100+ people sign it this year. We want this to be central to who we are as a church, that people are finding Christ as a part of our mission here. The next week, we talked about belong. We talked about how a basic cultural problem that we have today is loneliness and lack of belonging, and how we want to help answer that issue in our society. So we want to be a church that makes it simple to belong to our church family. We want to make it simple to belong to our church family. And you certainly can join me in having a role in that work. Of every time you see someone that you don't know, taking the risk of saying hi, remembering their name, connecting with them when you see them again. Helping people feel like they belong is a key issue for a church today, because there's such a struggle in people's lives to feel like they have a place to belong. And I think one of the real mysteries that you'll find is that when you help other people belong, you'll find that it gives you a sense of belonging as well. Really, really important concept there. The third, we want to help you identify your unique role to play in God's story. God is doing something. God is at work in our world. God is at work in our communities. God is at work in our workplaces. God is at work in our church. And we want to be a part of helping you sort through how you can be a part of what God is doing in our world, using your unique gifts, your unique talents, your unique story to really leverage who God has made you to be and to find where you fit in with what God is doing in the world. And then today, our final part is we want to develop a personal faith that thrives and serves in today's world. We want to help you make your faith personal. We want to help you own it. And we want to help you put it to work and into action. So it isn't just a discombobulated idea that you're a Christian that doesn't integrate itself into all of our lives. And we want to be a part of helping you live out your Christian faith in a deeply personal way. And so today, in order to get there to talk about that a little bit, I want to talk about the idea of vision. And the vision connects back to the mission. They are in some ways the same exact thing. The mission is meant for us to bring the vision into practice. And so if you can recall at all what I just read, you'll see that the vision says that we are a church that helps people find Jesus and move towards a thriving faith. That connects the first box in the last box. We want to be a church that helps people find Jesus and move towards a thriving faith. So I want to talk about vision statements a little bit, and I'm going to show you a few vision statements of companies that you know very well. If you read through these are companies that I imagine you know, and you can begin to connect what it is these companies do, and you can see how they bring this to life. IKEA says that they want to create a better everyday life for many people. If you've ever walked through an IKEA before, you know that there is high-end, low-end, there's garbage products, there's intricate products. You can walk into apartments that are in theory 320 square feet, and they want to show you how they can make it a functional place to live. You can also walk through places that are more incredibly designed, intricate kitchens that are the size bigger than some of the apartments at the beginning of the store. And so whether or not you have an 800 square foot kitchen or you live in a 300 square foot apartment, they want to show you that they can make your life better, helping you organize, helping you use your space well. What they don't say is that they want to sell furniture. Isn't that interesting? They want to create a better everyday life for many people. That is an evocative phrase that helps color what they do. The next one is Microsoft. Microsoft says they want a computer on every desk and in every home. Well, they succeeded, didn't they? A computer on every desk and in every home. And if you can recall Microsoft, where they came from, right? They began in the 1970s, where computers were not personal and they were not in homes. But their vision and their mission was to put one in every home. And they've succeeded. Amazon again, they could say they want to sell you junk on the internet. Right? Yeah. Instead, they said they want to be Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online. I went to college right after the internet boom. And when I got there, I walked into the college bookstore, and I saw books that I wasn't sure that I was ever going to read, but my syllabus said I needed to have. And they had price tags on them for like $250. It's crazy, right? And I thought to myself, oh, why do I want to buy a $250 book? And someone came and tapped on my shoulder and said, hey, go check it out on Amazon. Someone's probably selling it for half price. Amazon? What is Amazon? So I went and checked Amazon.com. It was a bookstore in its early days. This is what they put to bed almost all college bookstores, right? College bookstores are not what they were 20 years ago and 40 years ago because of Amazon. But Amazon didn't stop there. They started pushing towards profitability, but the vision of the company was never to become a bookstore. It was literally this, that you could find anything you want with a customer-centric vision. And so every time they could hit profitability, they didn't, and instead put it back in infrastructure and put it back into building more warehouses and creating more and more lockers and delivery systems. And more they made it customer-centric so that you could get things faster in anything you want. No matter when they got to the point that they could have started turning a profit, they kept thinking we've got to get more and more connected so we can get to our customers quicker. And they almost went from teetering on the edge to exploding in value overnight because they kept pushing until they had a system in place that reached their vision that they would be Earth's most customer-centric company. So those three companies, they make sense. You interact with them, but they're all kind of different. What happens when you look at a company that all makes the same thing? How is it that you then differentiate as a vision statement? So this next one is all three car companies, okay? And see if you can begin to imagine in your mind how these companies might be different. The first one is, and I didn't put it there, so I want you to kind of guess what this company would be, okay? The first one is democratize the automobile to become the world's leading consumer company for automotive products and services, okay? They want to get this out to everyone. They want this to be available to everyone. They want to sell in volume, right? Number two, the next one, to delight our customers worldwide all of the time. Okay. This is then like a luxury item, right? This is not supposed to get you from point A to point B. This is supposed to have you excited to get from point A to point B, right? And then the third one is accelerate the advent of sustainable transport by bringing mass market electric cars to market as soon as possible. Now this wants to be efficient, eco-friendly, green. It wants to transform what the car is and what footprint it leaves on the environment, right? So all three of these are car companies with three very distinct visions, right? Do you have in your mind which one of these three they are? All right, check out the next slide so it shows you. The first one is Ford. They want to democratize. They want to get parts. They want to get cars. They want to put a Ford in everyone's driveway. The next one that wants you to delight in your experience is Audi. And the third one is Tesla, wanting to bring sustainable green cars to the market, right? Fascinating how all three of them are car companies, all three of them with distinct visions that they create distinct cars from each other. You know what these three different cars are like, right? And all of them really are meant to be automobiles to get you from point A to point B, but all of them do so in a different way. You can see how their vision is revealed in different sort of ways. And so what makes a good vision statement then? You can see how all of these vision statements play out. But a good vision, I know this is a little small, but I try to get so much on there. But vision statements do a few things. They are future focused. They name where you are, but really they're calling you from where you are to something. They want to give you a big picture, describe what your organization will look like in several years. They are directional. They serve as a guide to organizational plans and strategies. Meetings should be centered around achieving the vision. They are specific because they're clear and focused to shape decision making. They're relevant and purpose-driven. They reflect the organization's response to the challenges of the day. They're value-based. You can see in them what the values are of the organization. They're challenging because they inspire the members of the organization to do greater things than they're currently doing. They're unique and memorable. They highlight what is different and important, and they should inspire. They should appeal and engage to people to make a commitment to the cause. And we're hoping that this mission statement, this vision, does exactly that for us. And so if we can bring that screen up one more time, in order to make it memorable, because I don't suspect that you can quote all four of those sentences, but we've highlighted 4 words to give us a sense of what it is. Discover, belong, identify, develop. Discover, belong, identify, develop. And this is meant to be a pathway, a way for us to travel, that we discover Jesus, we belong to the church, we identify our role, and we develop a personal faith. And in doing that, you can see how each one builds on the former. And our goal and our hope is that you, as you begin to see these 4 core characteristics developing in your life and in your connection to the church, you begin to see that you are beginning to have a faith that is thriving in this world when you're doing all 4 of these things. And when you're doing all 4 of those things, we're hoping that you'll be so enlivened and excited by your involvement in these 4 phases of the church that you're then inviting others to come along on the process with you. That at some point, this doesn't become about you anymore, but it becomes an outflowing of our church for others to be involved, not just leaving you behind. And so today, the part that we're talking about specifically is developing a personal faith that thrives and serves in today's world. The faith needs to be personal, right? It's got to be owned by you. Your mom, your dad, your best friend can't make you a Christian. At some point, we have to own it for ourselves. We have to decide for ourselves to lay down our lives and follow Jesus. It's a personal faith. But it's one that's done in community. This is the text that we read early on, right? Hebrews invites us to live our faith out together, to help one another. And this is why we do church, is to help each other out along on the journey to faith. And so we're hoping that the church helps make the faith personal for you so that you can then give back to the church, helping make it personal for others, right? These are some of the barriers, I think, that cause us to struggle in thriving our faith in today's world. There are many things. This is just a basic start, but these are struggles we see that are keeping our faith from thriving in the world today. Busyness. I like to say this a lot, so forgive me if you've heard me say this before, but the most common response I get when I say, "How are you doing?" is, "I'm busy." In fact, busyness is such a societal value that if you can't say you're busy, you're afraid you're doing something wrong, right? Well, we don't like being busy. We're afraid to look like we're not busy. Am I right? This is a problem, right? Because eventually what happens is we get ourselves so busy that we spend very little time at the feet of Jesus. We spend very little time engaging with our church. Every other thing that shows up takes our attention, and we've got to appear or be busy in order to fit in. Busyness is a potential barrier between us and our personal faith with Christ. Anxiety and depression is another struggle in today's world. We are a people in American society. Part of it is externally based, right? We're always connected, always seeing what's going on. Our news is more comprehensive than ever, so that when our grandparents were children and there was a typhoon in Taiwan, we never knew about it. But now every natural disaster, every shooting, every political battle, every fire, everything is in our hands. And we're constantly engaged with what the struggles of the world is. Every problem is personal, and we feel it. Every friend's adventure is better than our own. We see it on Facebook, right? Anxiety and depression, a lot of it is chemical. Some of it emerges out of our constant connection to the world. And we're always worried that we're not living our best life because we put together a view of everyone else's best moments and create that to be the normal life that we need to achieve, right? Anxiety and depression is a real struggle in our society today. Guilt, loneliness, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. The internet is a pronounced struggle in today's world. The internet is the best thing ever, and it's the worst thing ever. I think you kind of know what I mean there. If not, you can ask me later. There are competing religious narratives. More than ever are we running into people from different religions, whether that religion is none, whether that religion is Buddhism, it doesn't matter. There are religions everywhere, and we're more and more engaged in hearing those stories than we ever have, and that creates a struggle. Now, it's not necessarily bad that we have friends of other religions. That's not what I'm saying, but our connectivity to other religions is creating new stories and new things to think about, right? And so it's a potential struggle. And then increased financial viability also creates more opportunities. When a lot of us were kids, families had enough money to go on one vacation a year. And so most families would be at church 51 weeks a year, and they would go on one vacation a year. Now it seems there's enough money for us to be traveling constantly, weekends away, teams that travel to distant places with our kids, right? Our ability to be more viable in terms of movement, better cars, better trips. There's more places for us to go, and so it's harder for us to stay plugged in with our church because there's a lot of different options for us. We could go on and on and on. This only begins to scratch the surface. There are other narratives, there are other issues in our society today, but we could go on and on about how the society we live in, most of this is amoral stuff. It's neither good nor bad. It just is, right? But it's creating in us an ability to engage in many, many things. And oftentimes it pulls us away from growing our faith in ways that were much easier for our forefathers to do so. And as a church, we need to work to help ourselves, us, work together to keep engaged with our faith. Because these things aren't going to change and they're not going to go away, and they're not necessarily bad things. But how do we as a church work together to help us keep plugged into Christ in the midst of all of these changing narratives? Now, that's the point of the text that I read earlier today from Hebrews. I read that text because it so specifically and vibrantly says that this race of faith in our life is not a sprint. It's not about this week getting it right. It's about living a life of faith and how the church can come together and help one another, that you're not on your own. And in the middle, in chapter 11, what I didn't read was this long, evocative story of heroes of the faith from the Old Testament, one after another, Abraham all the way through. And their stories are briefly mentioned as a reminder of how God showed up in their lives. That by faith, they were able to overcome the struggles that were placed before them. But each time, it was a God who had a long view showing up in moments that they needed them and interacting with them, so that faith was never just about you trying to find God, but about God making his way into your life. And it's a reminder that no single week is going to make or break your life, but life is to be ran as a persevering race, like a marathon in partnership with God. And then the author of Hebrews reminds us that you're not on your own, that there are times and weeks that running is going to be difficult. So the church should be meeting together to come alongside one another. And when you can't run this week, we can put your arm around our shoulder and say, hey, I got you this week. We'll do this together. That this is a long-term journey in life towards God, where there are ups and downs, moments that you get it right and moments that you struggle. But in the struggling, we need to be plugged into our church because our church helps us in the struggling moments. When we're struggling, hopefully someone else will come along with just the right word or just the right hug or just the right encouragement. And then when we're feeling good and life is flying for us, we show up so that we can be a blessing to that other person that is struggling this week. We help each other out on this journey by encouraging each other on in this persevering life. And we find that along the way, hopefully 70, 80, 90 years of life, that when things get really down, when we're really struggling, we serve a God who shows up. And the stories of the Old Testament, Hebrews 11, if you wanted to go read that later, you would be blessed by it, is a reminder that God shows up at just the right time to his people all of the time as well. And so as we close out today, I want to remind you one more time of what our mission and vision is. And you can see on this one, I added arrows here as a reminder that there's movement to it. We discover Jesus. We find that we belong to a church. We identify what our role is so we can begin to be a part of what the church is doing. And then out of that, we develop a personal faith that both thrives internally and also serves externally, which leads us back to helping others discover Jesus. This is meant to be a circle, a pathway, a movement where we're growing, and then once we begin to feel as though we're thriving in some way, we start inviting and bringing other people along as well. We go from discipled to discipler. One of the major things I heard from the people in our church who worked with me on this is we want to have a vision that helps us grow. We want to find that we who are here invested in this place are growing as well. And the really, really important thing for us to remember is that we don't grow in our faith by coming to church on Sunday and then walking out the door after an hour and nothing else. We've got to be filled up to pour out. We've got to be filled up to pour out. We've got to be working out our faith. We've got to be putting it to the test. We've got to be leading others along with us. If we're just simply sitting in the pews asking to be fed all the time, you're never going to grow as a Christian, all right? If you are just fed all of the time and you never work that off, you become spiritually obese. You've got to exercise the feeding that you're receiving. You've got to work, come back, receive, and work. Just like if you wanted to get your body really fit and really strong, you would eat well and go to the gym and work out, and then you wouldn't go and eat an ice cream and a pie and then not work out again for 3 weeks, right? You eat well, you work out, you eat well, you work out, and you find that your body becomes fit. So it works with our spiritual journey as well. We come to church, we go to small group to be fed, but we work it off lest we become spiritually obese people. And so my final invitation on this mission is a reminder that it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. This is what the church is wishing for you. We are wishing that you discover Jesus and that you find a thriving personal faith. We wish that with all of our hearts. We pray for that. We hope that Jesus makes a tangible and massive difference for you, and you feel as though you are thriving in your faith. That naming yourself as Christian is a victorious statement to the world. That you feel that your life has been massively improved by your relationship to Christ. But it's also a call upon you as well, that you would join us in carrying out this mission and vision. It can't just be a top-down thing. It's got to be something that we all gather together and say, we want to work together for the sake of the mission of the church. We want to see our kids, our neighbors, our friends. We want to see people we haven't met yet, but will turn out we'll really love. We want to see them discover Jesus and find a thriving faith as well. At no point does this mission or vision ever cease to exist, because just as soon as you feel like you're doing well, we ask that you would join us in helping other people thrive as well. We have got to own this comprehensively and corporately. It can't just be something that our small group pastor and our kids pastor, our youth pastor, and lead pastor are interested in. It's got to be something that we all join in together and say, let's figure out what our role in bringing this to fruition is. And so as we finish today, I'm going to invite you to do something in just one moment, but I want to tell you a story to set it up. When I was a teenager, I was invited into a canoeing competition at teen camp. I was put in a canoe just like that. There were 3 canoes, and it was supposed to be a race around the outside of a swimming area in a pond. And I looked at the 2 groups that were called up first, and I thought, oh yeah, I can beat those idiots. I told you I'm a little competitive, right? And so I volunteered, and I got put in the boat with someone I didn't know, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm athletic, I'm strong, I'm big, this is going to be no problem whatsoever. And so I sat in the back, and I told the person in the front, I said, listen, I will tell you where to paddle. You just paddle like crazy. Okay, sounds good. And so we had to go around the outside of the square swimming area in the lake. That was it. It was a simple little squared off race. And so off we went. Go! And I started paddling. And I saw that the person was paddling not in concert with me and on the same side. So I switched the paddle to the other side. And the person realized that I'd moved, so they switched the paddle too. And I said, no, we can't paddle on the same side. We've got to paddle at the same time on opposite sides. And so I switched the paddle again, and they switched the paddle again. And I said, stop switching the paddle. Meanwhile, the other 2 are making the first turn. And so we got out a little ways, and the person wasn't paddling at the same time as me. It was like this. And then we started spinning in a circle. And I was like, what are you doing? Listen to me. I'm telling you what to do. All you got to do is follow what I'm saying, and we will go fast. And no matter what I did, they did the same thing as me. And we just kept spinning in a circle. Meanwhile, the other 2 had finished, and we're just way out in the lake, just rotating in a circle. And I was just beyond frustrated at this point. And so we didn't even finish the race. We came so far in 3rd place, it was embarrassing, frankly. And I learned a lesson that day, that when it comes to canoeing, you have got to paddle in the same direction. And literally everyone has to paddle in the same direction in order for it to work. The bigger the boat is, the more important it is that everyone with a paddle in the water is in concert with one another, paddling in the same direction. And so I want that to be a metaphor for all of us as we head into the close of our Mission and Vision series for where we're going as a church. On each side of the sanctuary here, I've got a paddle, or whatever you'd like to call it, laid down on the table. And around it are keychains, large magnets, and small magnets with paddles on them. And as we sing our final song today, my invitation to you is this. I would love to see you make a commitment to say, I want to be paddling in the same direction as everyone else in this church. I want to see this place become a force for Jesus Christ in the Howard County, Baltimore County, Carroll County communities. I want to see people's lives changed, and I want to be a part of it. I want to be center to what Crossroads is doing, and I want to be one of the people who are paddling in the same direction as everyone else. And so if that's you, if you'd like to make that commitment, I want you to come forward and sign that paddle and say, I'm in. Whatever I can do, whatever my role is, I want to be a part of paddling in the same direction for the sake of Crossroads Church, for the sake of people who need to find a thriving faith in this world, for the sake of people in the community that don't even know they need Jesus yet, for the sake of my neighbors and my friends and my kids who are here, that I want to see have a thriving faith. I want to be a part no matter what it takes, whatever role I can take. If you would come forward and sign one of those paddles, it's just simply saying, I want to be a part of paddling in the same direction as Crossroads Church. And then there are mementos on the table as well. There are keychains. There are small and large magnets. And my hope is that if you sign the paddle, you take one of those as well. Put it up on your refrigerator or attach it to your keys, just as a reminder in your everyday life that you're not a part of Crossroads Church just when you're in this building, that the mission and vision of this church is enacted in all of our lives, that you are called to be a part of the church, to be a man or woman of integrity, a person who's open to doing what Christ asks you to do even when you're not here, that we carry out our role as Christians in public ways in this world. And these can be just little mementos and reminders in your life. When you're grabbing your orange juice in the morning or pulling out your keys to go to work, you may just see that and remind yourself to say, yeah, I'm paddling in the same direction as the church even when I head to the office, even when I bring my kid to soccer practice. I'm paddling in the same direction as everyone else, even when I'm at home helping raise my children. Just as a reminder of the all-encompassing work of being a Christian in this life is. So as we sing this final song, when you're ready on your go, stand and come and sign the paddle and take a memento and remember that we are all in this together. Let's stand and sing.